All right, guys. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to begin our unit on war by thinking about the very first war, or at least what this article tells us is the very first war. And hopefully with that, we can start answering our question of what does war tell us about mankind by thinking, why have people gone to war since the very beginning? We want to think about what drives us as a species to something as awful and damaging as war. So, in order to do that, the skill that this is asking us to use is the skill of finding evidence. We found a lot of evidence last year. We remember that evidence is just clues. Like if you're a detective and you're trying to figure out who killed that lady, good evidence might be there's a fingerprint of this suspect on this gun, right? So we want to look at our questions and try to answer those questions using evidence from the text. So let's look at our instructions. The article is called "An Ancient Brutal Massacre May be the Earliest Evidence of War." Instructions. Number 1, highlight evidence that helps answer the following questions. 2, annotate your highlights to explain how the sentence helps answer the question. And 3, write your answers to these questions in the box at the bottom of the text. So I'm going to do this pink section. All of this is me. The blue section, you will do yourself. So you're going to watch me do part of it, and then you're going to do the rest of it. And this will be part of your grade for today. So let's do a little bit of practice with the first half of the article. Okay, first thing that you want to do, you want to start by looking at the questions. Look at the questions so you can read and figure out what exactly you're trying to answer, right? So I'm going to look at my questions. 1, what are features of a typical war according to this article? All right, so I'm looking for what is normal in war, what characteristics describe war, and 2, what clues tell us that an attack on the Nataric people was an act of warfare rather than an act of random violence. So these are the 2 things I'm looking for. Very important to note is that you want to have read all of this before you start doing your highlights, right? You don't want to just like go in and pick and choose things because then you're not getting the proper context. But in order to keep this video short, I'm going to go straight to some of the things that I have already read. So what are features of a typical war according to this article? So my first highlight, I'm going to drag my mouse across this right here. And I'm going to go to this highlight button, and I'm going to highlight it in yellow because that's what I feel like highlighting it as. It says, this violent scene resembles something from the darker side of modern warfare. So what I have learned from that, I'm going to go over here, right-click, go to comment, and I'm going to put in a comment just like the instructions ask me to. This is me annotating. So I'm going to say, violence is a characteristic of both early and modern warfare. I've annotated this. It's basically what the article says, right? Like the Nataric people committed a great act of extreme violence, and also it looks like the darker side of modern warfare. So this is clearly a characteristic of war both then and now. So it's probably not war if there aren't acts of extreme violence. I could also find a couple of other ones. One that I thought was particularly interesting was warfare has often been associated with more advanced sedentary societies that control territory and resources. So I'm going to put in a comment here. Warfare usually occurs between societies. So it's usually not individuals against other individuals. It's usually large groups against other large groups. And it's usually over resources. So people don't just go to war over nothing, they go to war over things. Spell that correctly. Okay, comment. And then that's about all I'm going to have time to do, but I can answer my question here. What are features of a typical war according to this article? Violence and fighting over resources. All right, so that's roughly what you're going to do. See how you do on the second half.